Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an A330 pilot, and in today's video let's have a look into how to resolve a common Airbus FMS phenomena. The same, by the way, also applies to similar Boeings, even though the message is slightly different. We've got a too steep path ahead message in our flight plan, and we can see after Golf November 203 the airplane tells us it's not able to catch up the path to Golf November 204. Now, having a very quick look into the arrival, we can see that over here at waypoint 203 we've got a maximum 210 knot restriction at a mandatory altitude of 6,100, and then at Golf November 204 we're mandatory in 3,000 with a maximum of 185 knots. So now we've got to have a look at how we can fly that approach. First of all, let's have a look into the star chart so that we know what we're up to. We've got a couple altitude restrictions here, 9,000 feet at waypoint 612 and then 6,100 at waypoint 203, from where we are going to join the RMP approach into 3-4 right at Hurghada. Now, the basically easiest thing that we can do in order to cope with that vertical problem over here is to simply reduce our airspeed. But before we do that, let's quickly understand exactly what the issue is. So, we've got a 210 knot maximum restriction in here, but if we have a look into the vertical revision, we can see that the Airbus FMS has 210 knots exactly. So obviously one possible solution for the problem is to simply reduce your airspeed. We are expressively allowed to do that since our restriction here says maximum 210, so we are allowed to fly slower. For that reason, for example, entering a 180 knot restriction over here might be a good thing to do. At the same point in time, let's go ahead and start our descent. We go all the way down to 2,000 from where we're going to start the approach. Now, by looking at the altitude over here, which is showing magenta, we can already see that the Airbus does plan to level out at 6,100. So it does plan to reach the path rather early on, and therefore we should be able to make our speed constraint over at 203. Now, let's have a look into the options we have. When we need to go down and slow down, like in this case, then we have a couple different options. The first one is to slow down first, if our procedure permits. In this case it does, since the 210 knot restriction was just a maximum 210 knots and not an exactly 210. But let's say that the restriction was exactly 210. So let's assume a different scenario now, where we've got a 210 restriction over here, which we need to meet. Then there's a few things we can do. The easiest obviously would be simply to lower the landing gear in order to increase our drag. And while that is an acceptable option for you to do, it is also the most unelegant one. You might have to do it in case nothing else helps, but it would be the last option that I would resort for. Our altitude is also constrained since we have to be at 6,100 exactly, and over here at waypoint 204 our two restrictions of 3,000 feet and 185 knots are also exact restrictions. The most elegant solution for the problem would obviously be to request to pass waypoint 204 above 3,000 from air traffic control. They would typically be able to relieve you of that restriction, and therefore you could come in a little bit higher, seeing that in the aftermath you got 5 miles over here to lose just 1,000 feet altitude, so that gives you a little bit of extra margin. Couple rules of thumbs that you can use with most airliners there. For every 1,000 feet of altitude loss, you need approximately 3 nautical miles. In turn, that means if you've got 5 miles to lose 1,000 feet over here, then you basically got 2 miles extra. Per nautical mile, you can usually lose approximately 10 knots of indicated airspeed. So roughly we could cross waypoint 204 about either 600 feet higher, or if the speed constraint wouldn't be there, we could cross it a little bit faster as well in order to just dive down on that path over here. Now, as a demonstration, today we decided to go for the 180 knot speed restriction over here, which I am going to reduce my speed towards right now. Also be aware that the approach phase has automatically been activated by the plane, as you can see, so the plane is going to reduce speed even further. Now, all we need to make sure is that we are below the flap speeds by the time we start our descent over here, so that we actually got the drag out and that we can make use of that drag in order to catch up the profile. So, speed is coming down nicely. We are reaching the 180 knots, approximately a beam waypoint 203, and we are now starting our descent along the profile. Let's see how this one is going to turn out, and let's see if we are even going to need the speed brake to make this one at all. So, the steep profile is now coming, the one where the aircraft is convinced that it can't make it. We still got the too steep path message down here in the FMS. But look at that, due to the drag of the flaps, we are slightly gaining airspeed as we are diving down to follow the path. But as you can see, overall everything is exactly under control and we're now able to make our path down. So, to recap, in my opinion, the most elegant solution is to reduce your airspeed if possible, obviously provided that ATC is not a factor over here. So the most elegant would obviously be just to ask ATC to relieve you of that 3,000 foot restriction over there. But if that is not possible, then in my opinion the most elegant solution is to reduce your airspeed and then dive down on the path with the drag of the flaps extended in order to make your profile. If that is not possible, then you can always go about using the landing gear or using the speed brake. Now, this late in the approach, the landing gear is probably the more elegant solution than the speed brake, but you get where this is going. Alright, as you can see, we are now perfectly on course to make our profile. 185 knot restriction, we are at about 185 knots, and we are about to reach 3,000 feet as well. Obviously, with the flaps extended like this, normally on an approach you would not retract them anymore, but as you can see, the Airbus is slowly, very slowly accelerating, so a little bit of speed brake might be favored in order to keep the speed below our speed restrictions. In this particular case though, since we've got a rather flat segment coming up over here down at 2,000 feet, we basically don't need that anymore and we can simply leave the flaps, leave everything as it is, and that speed is going to come off anyway now. Alright, easy going once you know what you are supposed to do, isn't it? That's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I sure hope that you learned something today. If you did, do let me know in the comments below. Now, also let me know what kind of techniques you prefer to use for approaches like this. And that's going to be the end of today's video. Thank you for watching. If you did like it, be sure to leave a like in the video description down below. And to subscribe to the channel if you're up for more. Thank you very much for watching, and if you really love what I'm doing, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you very much, and I'll see you all again on the next one.